Hello, my name is Anastasiya Fiadotava. I'm a junior research fellow at the Estonian Literary Museum, and today's topic of my talk is Cooking with Humor, Belarusian humorous folklore about family cooking traditions. At this study, I'm using a dataset on humor about cooking that consists of two parts. One of the parts are the jokes that I have collected on Belarusian segment of the internet. The other part are family anecdotes that were told to me during 60 interviews that I had with Belarusian families during my fieldwork in 2016 and 2017. By anecdotes, I mean personal experience stories that relate about a certain event or experience. The aim of my study was to compare the two datasets and see if the values and attitudes that are expressed in the jokes and family anecdotes are similar, and if yes, to what extent. But before I talk about similarities, I would like to talk about differences between the datasets. One of the obvious differences is the genre and generic attribution of the humorous items that I have collected. Most of the jokes that I have collected on the internet belong to the genre of canned jokes or set-piece jokes. They have a setup and a punchline, in which the most funny part of the joke is revealed. However, the family narratives are much more diverse in their structure. Some of them also consist of jokes with a punchline, but many more of them are much more fluid and are represented by narratives, short stories, little puns, phrases, nicknames, and other pieces of folklore that are difficult to categorize using a generic categorization system. Another difference concerns the content of the jokes and humorous items. The jokes that I have collected on the internet are very homogenic in terms of their content and reflect the generic attitudes and values that can be understandable to a large audience. However, the jokes that I have collected from personal experiences are much more diverse and they are rooted in the personal experience of the families that have created and maintained them. As you see, much of the content is dependent on the audience of the respective dataset of humorous folklore. The audience of the internet jokes is large and anonymous, and so if you want to post a joke on the internet, you have to take it into account and post something that will be understood by numerous users from different backgrounds and different families. However, the audience of the family anecdotes is never anonymous. When you tell a joke to family members, you imply that they have shared certain experiences with you, and they know some things that only you and they know. So this, of course, influences the way you tell the joke and the joke itself. So let's start with comparing the data sets. And first, I would like to tell you something about jokes about cooking that I have collected on the internet. Before I tell you about contemporary jokes, I would like to mention that jokes about cooking have been present in Belarusian humorous folklore already since the 19th century. This was a time when systematic collection of folklore has begun on Belarusian territories. However, cooking was not a very prominent topic back at that time. It was sometimes mentioned alongside other household duties, such as washing, cleaning, and the targets of the jokes were mostly women who did not do their household duties properly. Men were seldom mentioned in these jokes, and if they were only cooking as a result of some gender reversal. For example, some unusual circumstances demanded that they have exchanged roles with their wives or other female characters of the jokes. Many of the more recent jokes that date back to Soviet times and contemporary Belarus also target women. The most popular topic is women's lack of ability to cook properly. Consider the following joke. that was popular in the Soviet Union, but is also circulating on the internet and in oral tradition now. A young family is having lunch. The wife says, "You know, I have read in the newspaper today that a person has to eat 3 kilos of salt every year." "Of course, darling," replies the husband, trying to eat the oversalted soup, "but probably not at one meal." Another topic of jokes about cooking draws upon the fact that women should be cooking, and it is their duty instead of them doing more male jobs and more male activities. For example, one of the jokes goes as follows. A busy highway at noon. A female driver of an expensive Mercedes car suddenly hits the brakes and the car stops abruptly. Another car, a cheap Zhiguli car, hits into its back. The driver of the Zhiguli car also happens to be a woman. Whose fault is it? Both of them. They both should have been at home cooking lunch. As you see, cooking is considered to be a female chore. However, men are also sometimes the butts of the jokes, but the jokes that feature men in this cooking topic are different. They mostly revolve around the idea that men cook only occasionally, and it is a special event when a man cooks. As you can see, the jokes relate and reflect patriarchal and conservative values that date back to the times when women were staying at home and men were breadwinners. However, the very existence of the jokes, such as the highway joke, for example, points to the clash between patriarchy and modernity. The times have changed. Women are now driving, women are now doing all the jobs that only males were allowed to do in the previous centuries, but still they're supposed to cook and stay at home. The clash between this changed reality and conservative values creates incongruities that are funny and that are meta-commentary on the contemporary society. Before I tell you about family humorous anecdotes, I would like to tell you a little bit about family cooking traditions of my interviewees. This will not be a comprehensive account of family cooking traditions of Belarusian families because of the limited sample of my families that I have interviewed, but it will give you an idea about this particular people whose family humorous anecdotes I have collected. In my sample, only 7 couples have claimed that cooking is exclusively female chore in their family. In most of the couples, cooking is often shared between husbands and wives. The nature of the sharing is different. In some cases, husbands only cook when the wife is away. In other cases, husbands cook on some special occasions, for example, at weekends or during the holidays. Sometimes husbands have some special meals that they cook. Several families have mentioned such things as pancakes and draniki, which is potato pancakes, Belarusian traditional dish. So as you can see, in most of the families, wife still does the bulk of cooking. Only 3 families mentioned that wife does not cook at all, and they have immediately provided their justifications why it happens, though I never asked for any. So, as you can see, there is a certain link between jokes and reality. The stereotype that a woman is cooking is still very much there. However, the fact that the woman is the one who exclusively should be cooking is not relevant anymore because most of the cooking responsibilities is shared between husbands and wives. And often they are based on practical reasons. For example, the one who cooks is the one who has more free time at this particular moment. So going back to the family anecdotes that I have collected, it should be mentioned that most of them are situational and depend on the context of a particular family. For example, a lot of these family humorous anecdotes are about some kind of failures that occurred when a family or one of the family members tried to cook some new dish. It didn't work out, everything burned, it tasted awful. At this point, when it happened, the story might not be presumed as humorous. However, as the time passed and the anger and disappointment faded away, these stories are left in the memories of people as humorous family anecdotes and are told and retold to children and grandchildren. Sometimes the stories are about cooking or trying to cook some unusual food or putting an unexpected ingredient into a meal. And in these stories, the focus on gender is not very prominent. Some of the stories are about men not able to cook, others are about women doing something in their own way. There is no clear distinction in the gender aspect of this family humorous anecdotes. Moreover, as I have already mentioned earlier, these jokes have a more fluid structure than the jokes on the internet. If they're retold many times, they do not need to be repeated in full, but just the funniest part is repeated to remember and recall the experience of failure or cooking something unusual. Not only humorous family anecdotes can be funny and can be an interesting source for a researcher, but also emic reflections, people's reflections on what they cook, how they cook, and how they manage cooking in their family can also be an interesting data set. A lot of my interviewees have provided humorous comments when they were telling me about their experiences in cooking. For example, one of my female interviewees mentioned that her husband only cooks simple things and does things in the kitchen that do not require a lot of skills, such as peeling potatoes, chopping vegetables, but he doesn't do any fancy stuff, such as making soups or salads. She said that he provides his own reason for it, that he doesn't know how to do it, but she suspects that he doesn't want to know how to do it, in fact. Sometimes my interviewees also provided the reasons why they do not consider cooking as a topic that is appropriate to be joked about in their families. For example, when I asked some of my male interviewees if they tease their wives, who do most of the cooking in their families, about their cooking skills, several of them were explicitly stating that they do not do it. They do never do it because either the wives cook very well, or because they do not want to face any negative consequences of such teasing. Among the negative consequences that they mentioned was, for example, the idea that if one teases their wife because of the lack of her cooking skills, she might deprive him of dinners and lunches altogether. Moreover, one of my female interviewees said that he never mocks her husband cooking because he only cooks once every 3 years, and these are sacred occasions that are not appropriate to be joked about. In conclusion, I would like to mention that cooking is a very popular topic for jokes, both the jokes that are circulated on the internet and the ones that are there in the family oral humorous tradition. However, internet jokes mostly reflect cooking topics through gender lens and comment on the society at large and in terms of how gender relations are managed in Belarusian society. Whereas sharing family anecdotes in personal settings is much more intimate and context dependent, and mostly is based on particular family relationships and experiences. And a commentary about cooking can also be humorous and can present people's opinion in a more playful yet concise and interesting manner. Returning to the research question of comparison between two sets of data, internet jokes and family anecdotes, I would like to mention that comparing these two sets of data is bound to be a comparison of two different systems of references, each of which is functioning according to their own rules and principles, and it should be taken into consideration when trying to compare such diverse sources of family humor. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at anastasiya.fiadotava@folklore.ee. Have a pleasant day. Bye.